Hey guys, today I've got a really useful thing to show you, and that is how to read a nutrition label. So these labels are on virtually every packaged food that you'll find in the grocery store. You won't see them on things like apples and tomatoes and things like that because of obvious reasons, but these are required to be on the back of everything that you basically buy in a grocery store. So the FDA requires these. So I want to go over these in some basics. I'm not going to go over some of the details. I don't really want to spend time on the sodium and potassium and so on that you see here, and the vitamins as well. I'm not going to go into that, but I am going to go into the macro profile. So the first thing you want to look at on one of these nutrition profiles is the serving size. So this is just a meme that I found on the internet some time ago. And in this particular case, it is a serving size of a cup. So a cup is a volume measure, and I don't really like volume measures as much as I like weight measures, because you can weigh things on your food scale, but it's hard. You got to do a lot more detail basically to go by cups. So I prefer things that you can weigh. So I convert everything over to weight when I put it into my calorie tracker app, MyFitnessPal, which you guys know that I use religiously and love. So, but in this case, they used cup, and that's okay for the purposes of going over this label. So in this particular food item, which I'm not even sure what it is, this is 1 cup equaling 120 calories, okay? Now, one of the things I want to show you, one of the most sneaky and insidious things ever, is this little value right here, calories from fat. So this is one of those little values that it's underrated, but probably one of the more important ones that you'll find on one of these nutrition labels. And I'll tell you why. So check this out. In this particular item, it is 25 calories from fat from 120 total calories. So this thing is basically 20% fat. That is pretty high. It's the limit, I would say, really. So you don't want to have more than about 20% fat in your diet in a daily sense anyway. So it's pretty high. Then let's go on to breaking down the various types of fats. So there are the good fats and there are the bad fats. And I want to say something else about fats in general, which I've said this several times in other videos. I don't believe that you need to go chasing down fats. They are everywhere. If you pursue protein primarily, you will get plenty of fat in your diet, because virtually everything that has protein in it also has fat. So chicken, fish, meat, all those things they have fat content in them enough to satisfy your daily requirement. So pursuing fat specifically is probably a mistake if you're trying to lose weight, all right? So let's check it out. So the good fats are the unsaturated variety, and these, in this particular case, it has about 2 grams of unsaturated fat, and a half a gram of saturated fat. And trans fat is also a saturated type of fat, and one that you want to generally avoid. These are the fats that are associated with heart disease, high cholesterol, triglyceride elevation, and so on, whereas the unsaturated fats are associated with joint health, brain function, and some other valuable things, including heart health. But you just don't need a ton of them. And again, we're trying to lose weight, so because of their caloric density, you want to stay away from. Fat is more than twice as calorically dense per unit of volume or per unit of weight than protein and carbohydrates. So it's 9 for fats and 4 for carbohydrates and protein. So it's a significant jump calorie-wise per unit. Now, so I think that's pretty much all you need to know on the fat side. So let's go to carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates break into 2 significant groups, and I'm going to just call them good and bad. And the sugars that you get, like from an apple, let's say, those are simple sugars, but they're technically a carbohydrate. However, they are so simple in their structure that they mimic regular cane sugar, or sugar that you might add to a cup of coffee or whatever, just white sugar, table sugar. They're just about as simple as those. And so if you don't use them immediately for activity, they can easily be converted to fat. So like, I'm a cyclist, and we get these little packets of sugar basically that we can take on a bike ride. If you start to what they call bonk, which means kind of run out of energy, and you can take one of these little sugar packets, and it will definitely help you with your energy. And it's because the sugar very quickly assimilates in your bloodstream and can be used as energy while you ride your bike. So in a case like that, not so bad. However, just in your daily life, if you're having sugar at night, candy bars, things like that, the sugar is very easily converted into fat because it doesn't take any enzymatic activity at all to convert a simple sugar into a fat. So those are things that you want to be careful about. So complex carbohydrates, those are things like sweet potatoes, oats, cream of rice, things along that genre of food. And those are important for protein assimilation and for energy, and they break down much more slowly than simple sugars. So those are just some things to keep in mind when you're looking at these labels. And then finally, we're going to look at the protein level here, 5 grams. It doesn't say what this protein source is, whether it's animal or vegetable, but typically vegetable proteins are incomplete proteins, as the amino acid profile, there's lots of different amino acids out there, and you need to have enough of each basically in order for these things to be assimilated and used basically for muscle maintenance and other things that proteins are used for in your body. All right, so that's the basics on the various macros, and I'm going to go into some fun things that you guys might like to see, and that's we're just going to go over a few little labels. So I thought I'd start with a fun one, a McDonald's hamburger. So check it out. In this case, I'm not sure what kind of hamburger this is, but 251 calories. Check it out. Calories from fat, 86. So about 25% or so of this is fat. When you look at the saturated versus unsaturated fats, it wasn't as bad as I expected, quite frankly. So between these two polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, this comes in at around 5 some odd grams of unsaturated fats next to a little less than 4 of the saturated fats. So it's about 50-50 basically in terms of the good and bad fats. Carbohydrate wise, moving down a little bit more, a lot more sugar, 5.7 grams of sugar. I don't know why this dietary fiber ends up under the carbohydrate thing sometimes, but I feel like it should have its own category, but that's just the way that it is. And then 29 grams of carbs in general. So you've got 29 grams of carbs in this 251 calories. Not really as bad as I would have expected, quite frankly, for a McDonald's hamburger. And 12 grams of protein. And now in this case, this protein is coming from a meat source, which is generally a pretty decent source for humans for assimilation. So I got to tell you, although this thing is pretty high in calories, 251, it's not as bad as I expected as far as its food quality. I really expected it to be much worse, but hey, I want to tell the truth here, so there you go. Here's a fun one. So a lot of people eat Cliff Bars and similar things, so that they keep these things in your backpack, your purse, whatever. So let's check it out. 250 calories for 1 bar, and in that you've got 45% fat, so about 20% fat. So it's kind of on the limit. And usually where these things really get messy are in the sugar. And right here, 21 grams of sugar, that is pretty high. So, to get 21 grams of sugar, and check it out, only 9 grams of protein. Now, if it was 21 grams of protein and 21 grams of sugar, not so bad. But to only get 9 grams of protein out of 250 calories, that is pathetic. And so basically, a Cliff Bar is a sugar bar for the most part with some fiber because it usually has nuts and oats and things like that. But, the profile on these things is not that great. I do have bars in my diet, but I really just only use them if there's some reason I missed a meal and I'm really just dying. Otherwise, I stay away from them. So let's go on. This one's a fun one, cashew milk. Now, I'm not a fan of milk in general. Whole milk, 2% milk or low-fat milk. I'm not really a big fan, but cashew milk in particular is kind of insidious. It's really strange how it works, but check it out. For a serving of 1 cup, it's fairly low calories at 25, not that bad. However, look at the calories from fat. Almost all of the calories are coming from fat. That's about 80% of your calories coming from fat. That is not good. That is not good at all. So how they do that, I really don't understand because although I know that nuts in general, like peanuts and cashews and walnuts and so on, tend to be kind of high in fats. That's pretty ridiculous when you look at it. You think 25 calories, almost all of which is fat. So this is almost the same as like liquefied butter. It's really not that good. The calories are pretty low. So if I've recommended using this in sugar-free Jell-O as a mix, and you don't really put a ton of it in there. It ends up being about 2 cups for a packet, and that divides into about 3 or 4 servings. So the caloric amount is not that crazy, but still, you're looking at a lot of fats in this case. So, I'm not sure I would lean towards any kind of milk, and cashew milk, although it's probably better than whole milk in terms of fat, it's not that great when you consider like 25 calories and 18 of those are coming from fat. So here I'm going to go to my favorite, egg whites. To me, this is like the superfood of the world. Only 17 calories. Check that out. 17 calories. That's practically like air. And almost 4 grams of protein. Check that out. 3.6 grams of protein. That is fantastic. And I'm going to add another little whiz-bang statistic to this. Egg whites have the best protein amino acid profile of any food on the planet. You cannot beat them. So when you look at the calories per protein grams, you cannot beat an egg white. Not to mention they are dirt cheap. So if you can eat egg whites and you want to lose weight, they are by far like one of the best foods that you can have. Now check it out. A lot of people like peanuts and they think that's a healthy food. I got into a kind of argument with someone on Facebook recently who said that they were a great source of protein, and I had to object, saying that while they do have protein, to call them a good source of protein is completely untrue. Because check this out. Calories, 161 calories. From that, 126 coming from fat. So somewhere around 70-75% of this is pure fat. And it's not as good a fat as you might think. 1.8 grams of saturated fats. When you think of healthy foods, you think that they don't have saturated fats. Not so. There are saturated fats in peanuts, and it's to be avoided. The protein, as I mentioned before, this is a vegetable-based protein. It's an incomplete amino acid profile and not really conducive to muscle growth, maintenance, or whatever, because it's missing too many essential amino acids. Moving on to avocados. This is another one that people tend to think of as a healthy food to eat when you're on a diet. I don't know why it's so popular, but it is not good for you. Super dense in calories and tremendously dense in fat, almost pure fat. However, it is the unsaturated fat, so if you're going to have a fat, it's not a bad one to have, but just too much. It's just too many calories in fat. So look at that, 189 calories from 227 calories are from fat. That is way too high. Again, it is the unsaturated variety, which is the better of the 2 types of fats, but still, if you're trying to lose weight, this is not a good food choice for you, and if you're going to eat avocado, eat sparingly. This is another one, olive oil. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about olive oil. I'll try to be as brief as I can. So this is one thing that's really funny. I don't know how they're doing their computations, but I checked this, but it's 119 calories here. It says calories from fat, 122. So I'm not sure what the calculations are on the back end of this software application that's running this web page, but clearly there's some kind of miscalculation here. But I did look up on another site, and basically all the calories in olive oil come from fat. There are no other calories except for fat calories in olive oil. Now, one of the things about olive oil that's a huge misconception is while it does have a large percentage of unsaturated fats, people use this a lot of times in cooking. And if you're going to use olive oil in cooking and put it in the bottom of a skillet and you introduce heat, it breaks down the unsaturated, polyunsaturated bonds. It breaks those down. Heat breaks those down and turns it into a saturated fat as fast as you can turn that heat on. So if you're using olive oil as a non-stick agent in your skillet, you're using it for the wrong purpose. It will turn into saturated fat. You might as well just put corn oil in there. It's just as good, so, and cheaper. So you should definitely use something more like Pam spray if you can do that. So anyway, I hope that kind of helps you get a grasp on reading these nutrition labels. They are very interesting and full of pitfalls. So try to focus on getting your protein first, and all these other macronutrients like carbohydrates and fats tend to follow right along. So as I ask every time, please follow me on social media and look for my social media links that are below this video. Hope you enjoy this, day 22 of the weight loss challenge. There's a little bit of a long video. I tried to make it short, but there's a lot to it. So I'll see you guys back tomorrow. Congratulations on those that are still doing well. And for those of you that are backsliding just a little bit, It's not too late to get back on the bandwagon. So jump back on. Getting healthy is a fun thing. I'll see you guys tomorrow.